Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, I guess, depending, or evening, depending on where you are. We're going to get started today just because there is a lot to cover with this topic. Callie and I were just talking about how kind of a hot topic social media is right now. So today's topic is social media, and I am Dr. Dimberg. I'm the sports psychologist here at Banner Sports Medicine, and what we're going to cover today are some just facts about social media use. We're going to kind of emphasize teens, just teen athletes, as well as how maybe the teen brain and just nature of being a teenager may make them a little bit more vulnerable to certain things, what to do as either a parent, a coach, or just someone in an athlete's life, what digital literacy is, as well as some benefits and then concerns around surrounding social media use for an athlete. So some facts. I'm gonna give you a lot of information today, but just remember, if you're watching this, that you get access to the recording, so you can always come back to it. So if you're like, oh man, I didn't get that, just know that you can always come back. So just some facts about social media use are that there are estimated 4.9 billion users. That's not just teens, that's just users in general from last year. That different algorithms, especially depending on which format or type you're using, can really lead to kind of like a rabbit hole of information and can be kind of a time suck, right? I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but anyone that has used or been exposed to social media, I think we're all prone or susceptible to being kind of getting into that rabbit hole of different information. Teens spend an average of 4.8 hours a day on social media, right? That is a lot of time during a day. YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok are currently the most used platforms. TBD on how TikTok will continue to be used in our country, but currently it is the fastest growing platform for ages 16 to 24-year-olds. 59% of teens are the victim or subjected to cyberbullying. And then 210 million individuals, not just teens, are affected by social media addiction. So different ways that especially teens and kids might be vulnerable to when they're using social media is being able to think about what is their social media diet, right? So what that means is what are they consuming? What are the pages they're following, the people they're following? What is the information that they're taking in, right? So we think of diet as in like what food you're eating. This is what kind of information are they taking in and consuming from social media? And how does that then impact their brain development? How are they able to or unable to limit their self-control? That teens are more sensitive to feedback, particularly at the stages of like, preteen to teenagers. Their peers are the most important people in their life as far as who they take information from, where they want attention, and just reinforcing anything that they're doing. That more social media use has been shown to lead to a decrease in life satisfaction, and we'll talk a little bit more about mental health in the next slide, but that also simulated gambling games may lead to a higher risk of gaming disorder. So different social media platforms has access to different types of gambling games and things like that. So just something to kind of keep in mind. So switching gears to mental health and social media is that 41% of teens with the highest use of social media rate their overall mental health as either poor or very poor. 10% of the highest group, again, with the highest use of social media use, have also reported suicidal intent or self-harm. And then 17% of teens reported poor body image that had the highest use of social media. And then how parents come into this is that 60% of the highest users for teens rated low parental monitoring or weak parental relationships, and have said that they also had poor or very poor mental health. And that 22% of the highest users with poor parental monitoring or weak parental relationships also expressed thoughts of wanting to hurt or kill themselves, and then self-harm as well. So we're going to come back to it in a little bit, but talking about parental monitoring, keeping in mind this slide, right? And that having a strong relationship and having some type of monitoring with your kid could potentially, I'm not saying it's a direct relationship, but could potentially impact some of these mental health concerns that high users have been reporting for teenagers and social media. So the next slide talks a little bit about what to do if you're a parent, right? The first thing that I want to emphasize is do not just take devices away, right? Anyone who's maybe tried this, it doesn't tend to go over very well. And it feels almost like a punishment, right? So instead, try to promote the teenager's time to be spent doing something else. What are some other enjoyable activities that they have? What are other ways that they can connect with others? We're, all in the lives of someone with an athlete. So is there another enjoyable activity? Can you promote that particular team or something a little bit more, or different ways to maybe move their body or participate in like an art or any other kind of hobby, just to help them disconnect. I would recommend really encouraging other activities instead of having it feel like a punishment and taking that device away from a teenager. This is just something to note that the Kids Online Safety Act was introduced last spring. And what this is that there's a duty of care now for social media companies that are working to protect minors from some of these mental health harms, right? From also trafficking, drugs, and others by doing different audits. So my goal with showing you this is that it's not all on you as parents or coaches, right? That there are others kind of working to recognize how social media has an impact on teenagers, as well as what we're working to do in order to be able to kind of change some of this and keep our kids safe. So some other recommendations as far as being a parent, coach, whatever you may be in the teenager's life would be talk about social media, right? Let's not make it taboo. Being able to talk about it means that they might trust you and come to you with either questions or concerns, things like that, if you make it a normal part of your conversation with them. Monitor the amount of time that kids use. We'll talk about that a little bit more specifically in the next slide, especially depending on the age and how you might want to do that. The next one would be mindful of your own use, right? So we talked about the social media diet. Well, what are they witnessing how are they witnessing, I should say, you use your social media, right? If you're all at the dinner table and everyone's on their phone, is that a way that you could maybe encourage maybe some more communication across the family instead of, no devices at the dinner table, something like that? Are they witnessing you constantly taking photos and posting them, or only being on your phone? What they're kind of witnessing you do is going to impact their own use as well. So be mindful of your own use. Potentially removing devices at night, right? We talked a little bit earlier about how teenagers might struggle with some self-control. So if you're a teen and you have a phone and you're texting or, viewing TikTok all night, you don't have that self-control. Your frontal lobe is not fully developed to be able to say, oh, it is, such and such time. I need to go to sleep. I have school tomorrow morning. So creating rules around when the use may be, if you're not in the room with the child at night, right? Maybe removing that device at night. Making sure that the platforms that they use, whatever kind of platform that may be, that they're capable of using it and have a full understanding of what that entails. We'll talk a little bit more about that with digital literacy. Potentially screening and removing content as a parent, right? So if you're noticing that they have either participated in or are consuming again in that diet any type of discriminatory or psychologically maladaptive kind of content, again, talking about it, having that conversation with them to bring in that awareness, but also potentially removing that, right? Reporting it, things like that. Limiting their use with social comparison, right? Because it could potentially interfere with any type of physical activity. So again, thinking about that social media diet, who are they following, or who are they engaging with online, right? Are they frequently comparing themselves? Maybe once they started using a certain platform, did you start to notice certain changes within them, their behaviors, things like that? Are they making comments about comparing themselves to others and continuing to have those conversations? Being able to provide resources for them, as far as how do you report something, who do you go to for if you see certain content that maybe is that discriminatory or psychologically maladaptive, things like that. And then social media literacy, which we'll talk about here in another minute. And I just remembered, I forgot again, this happened the first time, but not last time. If you have any questions while we're going through this rapid fire, please feel free to type them into the Q&A. And Callie and I will go over them at the very end. We'll leave about 10 minutes to go over some questions. So please type as you're going if you have any questions. So the next topic that we'll talk about is how to maybe monitor, right? What is your role? The recommendations are for early adolescents in particular, that it's really important to maybe have even more monitoring behaviors, and then you increase that autonomy as they potentially get older, as well as being able to increase their autonomy once they've maybe demonstrated a solid understanding of the platforms, everything that that entails, including within digital literacy, which we'll talk about in a second, but it kind of includes, where do you report things? How are they understanding what it is that they're consuming? How do you recognize something that may be false? Different parts of that all go into digital literacy. And then as well, being able to balance that with their needs for privacy, right? They're a growing individual trying to become autonomous at some point. How do you balance being able to monitor and keep this athlete safe while also being able to make sure that what they're consuming and how they're interacting is maybe appropriate for their age, the platform, things like that. So I think, again, having those conversations, it's going to look different for every family and for every athlete. If you're a coach, what are you hearing your teammates talk about, right? Or the teammates, I should say. What are you hearing? What are you seeing them use, either between practices, games, things like that? What kind of the platforms are they talking about? Are you having those conversations with them or including information and kind of feeding that to the parents as well? So now getting into digital literacy a little bit more in depth, this is a way that you can really encourage social support. We'll talk about some of the benefits at the end, but being able to promote healthy socialization, right? Companionship, as well as emotional intimacy. A lot of the teenagers that we're all kind of working with now, we all went through COVID. And so what did that look like? A lot of people did turn to social media platforms or online for those socialization, for the companionship maybe that was missing from being able to be in person with a team. So ways that you can continue to encourage that, but having that knowledge of what any potential like maladaptive behavior within social media might be. So any discrimination, bullying, prejudice, hate towards a group or person, if they're engaging in looking up or they're being exposed to different forms of self-harm or harm to others, as well as disordered eating behaviors. I think there's a lot of people out there that post, recipes and things like that, but what are the other messages that they're maybe receiving within that? Again, comparing themselves, particularly young women we know, or young girls, I should say, are pretty susceptible to that, as well as beauty or appearance related content. So I had mentioned earlier about if you notice something changing, right? A behavior, particularly around clothing or makeup, anything like that for anyone could be a good way to bridge into a conversation around what is it that you're seeing on social media? Where is this coming from, right? And just having an open dialogue about it. So some things to know within digital literacy that can help you also determine how much to monitor and when to maybe increase their autonomy would be how to report something, right? So again, if they're witnessing or kind of consuming any of that illegal maladaptive behavior, how do they report it? And how does that differ based on the platform they're using? How to identify any misinformation, as well as how to protect their privacy, having conversations around maybe things that you should or shouldn't post, and how that can maybe impact you long term. Again, they're not thinking, their executive functioning skills are a little bit lower. So being able to bring in that awareness for them. Understanding misrepresentation online, and then being able to critically evaluate online material. So some benefits, I think we've talked a lot about, hopefully I didn't scare everybody within social media use, but there are a lot of benefits to being able to use it. So not just connecting with their teammates additionally, kind of outside on the court or on the field, but just connecting with others, right? So if there's a similar group that they, all like, being able to comment or enjoy learning different things, being able to promote their skills as an athlete, right? So in a way, marketing themselves as that athlete can be a way to help build their brand and bring in different awareness to either scouts, coaches, whatever kind of stage they may be in. That can be a really good benefit of social media use, right? We're seeing a lot more like NIL deals, college scholarships, things like that, that come from, saw so-and-so on social media, things like that. But with that, being able to recognize what you're promoting, right? So again, bringing in a little bit of that digital literacy understanding to make sure what it is that they're promoting is going to be in their best interest. And then as well, being able to just get information, right? We have access to so much information right now with social media, and it can be incredibly helpful. We can learn so much. So that's a really big benefit of being able to follow or work with any social media platforms. So some concerns to continue to look out for, particularly for parents, coaches, would be if you start to notice any changes or differences in the child or athlete's self-esteem, or maybe a need for validation, right? Are they taking more and more photos and checking it more and more frequently? Things like that may be time for a conversation and potentially raise some flags that you might have a concern. If they're either engaging in or a victim of bullying, or they're receiving a lot of critiques online, those kind of messages, maybe you're hearing comments, or I think frequently too, other parents maybe hear it from a child, right? Being able to share that with another parent if your own athlete makes you aware of that. And then the third one would be if they're measuring their success, right? So what I hear frequently is, oh, I only got, such and such number of likes or whatever that may be. And that has a negative impact on them, right? So they're measuring themselves up to whatever these outcomes are within social media. And sometimes that's just not realistic, right? And then some problematic use signs to keep in mind is that 50% of teens at some point report at least one of these signs. So they keep using social media, but have mentioned they want to stop. Maybe they crave checking social media, or they lie or use deception to go online, right? So if you're noticing any of those things, that might be a good time to, again, continue to have those conversations. Maybe that's where you decide to increase the monitoring and reduce that autonomy a little bit. Try and find some additional things that they could do, right? So again, encouraging the use with something else instead of having it feel so much like a punishment with something like this. Being able to potentially, if it's needed, give them those resources that they may need. Maybe it's time to see a professional and kind of work on this as well. So the next mental skills we're going to talk about are going to be mindfulness, goal setting, and body image. For social media, I think we could spend, oh my goodness, hours, potentially weeks, going over a lot more. So that was a really, really quick snapshot, and I'm excited here in a minute to go over some of your questions. But the next ones that we're going to talk about, at least for mental skills, are mindfulness, goal setting, and body image. I'm really excited about some of these, and also think if you have any other topics that you're interested in, please feel free to email us at the email here, hpc@Banner Health, and we are happy to try to work that in some way. So some of the different aspects that I do within mental skills at the High Performance Center include individual or team group topics, all of these different ones that we've already held, as well as even yoga. And then the High Performance Center also offers different testing, evaluation, sports med services, injury prevention, performance training, skill development, recovery and regen, and then performance nutrition. And our performance nutritionist also has a education series as well. So definitely check those out. There's some really good stuff there. And then here are just some references. This is where I got all of those lovely facts that I just inundated you with. And a lot of the recommendations and information came from all of those. So we are exactly at time to be able to go over some questions. I will leave on this slide. My camera is not working for some reason today. If you can even see this slide anymore, I'm not sure what you can see, but we can try the camera here, and we will go ahead and look at some of those questions now. Okay, so I don't see any questions. Does anyone have any from that very quick snapshot of social media use?
Hi, Sierra. I've got one that popped up from Patrick. He asks, and I may be able to take this one as well. He asks,
Sure.
are all available courses on the HPC site, including those offered by dietitians?
Do you want to take that one, Callie?
Sorry, I was just kidding. So they are not currently on the HPC site, but I can gladly send out. We have a comprehensive overview of all of our programs and services, complete with pricing and scheduling in the form of a PDF. So Patrick, if you don't mind, I think I have your email. I can send that over to you if you would like.
And in addition to that, the education series videos and recordings are all typically available. I can't remember if it was 30 or 60 days after. So there is not currently a way for you to go back, 6 months from now and review or watch this presentation. We are saving them and kind of working on different ways that we can engage and continue to give this information to the community. But that we're still working on that part. So currently there's no set site where you can access all of them. However, even if you were to sign up for any one of the topics and then weren't able to attend, so whether it's with the nutritionist or with myself, you still have access to that recording. So even if you're like, oh man, I really want to, attend the next one and learn some mindfulness skills, you can sign up for it and then still have access to that recording as well. I see somebody else asked for that information. So great. Thanks so much, Deanna. What other questions do you all have? No other questions? Well, I'll hang around for a couple more minutes in case anyone does have a question that they maybe want to ask, but not to the group. But otherwise, I hope you all have a great day, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you next month when we talk about mindfulness. Any other questions for those that stayed back? All right, well, we'll end it here, and I hope you all have a good day. Thanks for coming.